Pomio MP wants tougher laws on sexual offences. Morobe Governor assures Lay City street vendors ban will remain. And Prime Minister O'Neill tells APEC Papua New Guinea will maintain growth.
This is National EMTV News with Lorraine Genia.
Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's news. Pomio MP Elias Kapavore wants sexual offence laws reviewed. His call comes after widespread condemnation of incest cases that have tainted the image of East New Britain province over the years. Mr. Kapavore has also asked for tougher penalties to punish those who commit incest in the province. MTV's Edwin Fidelis reports from Kokopo.
At a week-long juvenile police training in Kokopo last week, Elias Kapavore, the new Pomio MP, asked for tougher laws to punish those who commit incest.
Headline from newspapers at the time. How about you address incest long community?
Mr. Kapavore is one of the few political leaders who publicly spoke about the ongoing incest cases in the province.
So what's the talk now? Who said the talk? And these are things that are also actually happening in the corner, affecting also picking people, you mean a common up. Now the question today, the possible law is how do we create a conducive environment?
The issue has begun to attract political attention as, to a larger extent, it continues to paint a bad picture of the province.
People that cannot stand up.
Chief Inspector John Colopen, who facilitated the juvenile training last week, also shared similar sentiments as younger women and girls fall victims to sexual assaults.
Particularly with respect to a female as victim of sexual abuse.
The Sexual Offence Squad in Kokopo revealed that every month at least 9 new incest cases are reported. Now most of the victims are minors who are below the ages of 10 years, and that's not all. Many more go unreported. In this interview with MTV last month, the head of Sexual Offence Squad in Kokopo, Sergeant Joe Bimaru, revealed that many instances of incest are not being reported to police.
When we as parents, we don't, we think that such things will not happen to our child. It's happening, but it's happening right in front of us.
While the police officers are making sure that each case makes it into the courtroom, they are also taking heed of a much bigger problem. Most of the cases are solved out of court. Sexual penetration of a minor carries more than 20 years in jail. While other provincial leaders have remained largely silent about the issue, the only people who have spoken out are small village-based awareness groups that received no direct support from the government. Edwin Fidelis, National EMTV News, Kokopo.
Morobe Province will be taking steps towards greater autonomy in a move that is expected to give the province more control over internal revenue and political decisions. While the Tutumang has agreed to autonomy, the legal framework has not yet been finalised. Today, Governor Kelly Naru said they are working with lawyers to finalise the documents to bring to the national government. The unrest of 2011 and the most recent last week has also prompted ordinary Morobeans to demand the provincial government to seek autonomy for the province. Governor Kelly Naru has given assurances that the ban on street vendors will remain and that Asian-owned shops have been issued warnings not to supply the vendors. Naru was speaking at a gathering of more than 1,000 people at 10 City in Lay this morning who came to receive a response to a petition presented to the Morobe provincial government last week. In the long term, the provincial government will be looking at increasing opportunities for local people.
There was heavy police presence on the road this morning in Lay as people prepared to hear the response from the provincial government. Just 7 days ago, these were the scenes in Lay as more than 3,000 people gathered at Sir Ignatius Kilagi Stadium to present a list of demands to the provincial government. This morning, a more orderly crowd. Morobe Governor Kelly Naru went through the list of demands, spending time to address each one.
These are all corrupt public servants. So people must take action and deal with them all.
Of prime concern for Lae City are street vendors who get their supplies from Asian-owned shops. The vendors congregate in public spaces like Erico and in many reported cases have been responsible for harassment and petty crimes. Last week, the provincial government announced a ban on street vendors. Today, the government said there will be an additional 40 people placed in key locations to assist in providing security.
We've got a manpower of 20. We will beef up another 40, and they will come from this place and all these other areas.
2 million kina has been allocated for the exercise. Much of it is coming from Morobe's internal revenue collections.
Total budget is about 2 million. But because we have to roll it out immediately, we look for funds somewhere and then we roll it out. But unfortunately, the bigger component, as we all know, come. PSIPM now no kada.
Street vendors may have come to the fore, but it's the land shortages and the lack of economic opportunities that's troubling the province. Morobeans feel marginalized, left out in the economic development that's happening around them. Scott Waide, National MTV News, Lae.
Still on the Lae protest petition, at Malahang's Ahi LLG office, Morobe Governor Kelly Naru told Lae City's traditional landowners not to sell their land, responding to complaints regarding land grabbing and illegal settlements in the petition. Naru said customary landowners are responsible for the increase in settlements. He also said the provincial government is fighting court battles to repossess state land from individuals who obtained it under dubious circumstances. Morobean political leaders have agreed to pass a law giving landowners and the government the power to evict unruly settlers.
Me by come up good long man Mary, by me stop inside long passing long lotu, by me not work in trouble, or picking up me by go school, me play ogara my come up good citizen inside long this community. Now me play not work in trouble. Now long this paper that's all you yet by you talk right or some. Suppose one blow every come up blow me or picking blow me or Mary blow me or Usati come up him. Then Papa ground you got right long to talk with them government, na government you come na Rossi Milo to the block.
Jack Barrier, the policeman who shot and killed 22-year-old Moana Pisimi in Lae, will be held at Buimo until his next appearance in court on November 30th. The adjournment follows the defendant's request to allow enough time to get a new lawyer to represent him in court. Last Friday, the defendant presented an affidavit to Judge Fraser Pitpit indicating that he wanted another lawyer to represent him. The National Court gave him until today to get a new lawyer.
Jack Barrier today told the National Court that he could not afford to engage a private lawyer to represent him in court. He requested that the court give him some more time to find a lawyer from the Public Solicitor's Office. But the prosecution told the court this particular case has attracted a lot of attention from the public, and any further move to grant bail will damage the court's reputation. Meanwhile, Judge Fraser Pitpit has directed the Public Solicitor's Office through lawyer Luke Siminzi to assign Barrier a new lawyer to represent him. In September, the National Court found Jack Barrier guilty of murder. The court found that Pisimi died of a shot to the back of her head. It followed a car chase on New Year's Eve. So far in this case, the court has felt the need to make 4 adjournments. The last 2 adjournments were to allow Barrier enough time to find a lawyer to represent him in court. This case has also brought to light the high fees charged by private lawyers, making it difficult for people to afford. Mata Lubis, National MTV News, Lae.
And to other news in Lae City, up to 5 prisoners escaped from Lae's Buimo prison just after midday today. Lae police confirmed the escape but couldn't say if the 5 have been recaptured. Earlier this year, more than 50 prisoners escaped in a mass breakout. Many remain at large. The annual 20 Days of Activism was launched this morning in Port Moresby. Aimed at advocating human rights and addressing social issues, the campaign will run for the next 20 days before ending on December 18th. Speaking to MTV News, Institute of National Affairs Director Paul Barker said the country needs more involvement from the government to curb human rights abuses.
Marking the launch of the 20 Days Activism, a small awareness program was held today in Port Moresby. NGOs, including civil societies and donor agencies, were present to start their campaign on human rights awareness. Speaking at the launch was Director of the Institute of National Affairs, Paul Barker, who gave an insight into the campaign.
20 Days of Activism is an event that happens every year, and it's trying to bring the whole community's focus on human rights issues.
The roots of the 20 Days of Activism dates back after World War II, where the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was commissioned. The 20 Days acts as a reminder to Papua New Guinea's commitment on preserving human rights. Barker says the country is failing with the increase of abuses like violence against men, women and children, police brutality and discrimination.
It's meant to be a reminder that the whole year is meant to be giving emphasis to human rights. So that has to be included in the architect's office, the city halls, the provincial governments, in government offices, in private sector offices and across the board.
Barker said a more serious partnership must be made between NGOs, civil societies and the government.
There are many in the provinces and at the national level family sexual violence committees that exist and children's rights committees. So NGOs, both the local NGOs and international NGOs, are very much taking a lead, but we need to make sure it's a partnership.
Meanwhile, the campaign will start with the International Children's Day this Friday, with NGOs targeting rural communities.
Respecting the rights of children is one of the things that we promote in our programs, and we want children to have complete right to everything. Children have the right to school, children have the right to many things that we can think of, and then we don't give that children, the adults doesn't give them opportunity to have enjoyment of.
Stanley Over Jr., National MTV News.
The patient who was diagnosed with extensive multi-drug resistant tuberculosis in Darra Western Province has died. This was confirmed by Western Provincial TB Health Physician Dr. Stened Hiasiri. While cases continue to increase, the national government and its stakeholders are being forced to address the epidemic as a concerted effort, as TB remains a serious public health issue. In this special report, our journalist Fabian Hakelitz, who has been following this story, gives us an insight into the state of health in the Western Province.
MDR, we got XDR. What happens when we don't manage the XDR?
News of his death was shared in the special parliamentary hearing into the health management of PNG this week in Port Moresby.
Because of waiting for drugs. We had to wait for betaquilin to come, and it took us quite some time to actually get a new drug into the country. And by the time the drug arrived, the patient was not in the condition to receive the medicine, and we lost him. And this is an example of one of the challenges that we faced.
Provincial TB Health Physician Dr. Stened Hiasiri told the inquiry multi-drug resistance TB cases continue to increase since detected in 2008. 249 cases recorded in 2014 was an indicator of a high rate of person-to-person transmission.
So as of 6th of November this year, we have registered 103 cases for this year as MDR-TB, of which 40% are primary cases.
The TB program has identified 3 phases to improve, strengthen and address the epidemic as outlined in the Provincial TB Strategic Plan and Accelerated Response Plan. In order to effectively and efficiently address this epidemic, funding and additional resources are immediately required.
We need money to drive it. Our funding for this year has been very limited. There has been no recurrent funding from the provincial administration, so there is no money been from the province. And we have been getting money from the department through Health Sector Improvement Program, HSIP, and that's where we are implementing our program. So, and
for the phase 1 that we said, we're still waiting for that 17.7 million kina. So there's no money, so there's no.
Daro is the epicenter, with transmissions of primary cases occurring both on Daro Island and communities along the coastline from Fly River Delta to Mabudawan in the west. Clinical responses so far has been coordinated well, but not sufficient. There's need for additional health workers.
If you don't have the human beings, if you don't have infrastructure in place, you don't have the support and logistics, and you don't have the technical expertise, then you can't do anything. Yes, we can say that we have progressed, but it's small, I would say. To be honest, I think it's a long way before we come to that, if we don't actually start now.
It's not enough to cater for those expected increased number of patients that are going to come in. Which also means that you need increased number of doctors and nurses to care for them. Which means that you need increased number of drugs to treat them. And we're talking about getting also prepared in a very effective way for the next 6 months. We're not talking about like, we just can't wait.
Mabudawan village in South Fly district shares a border with Australia and Indonesia. This wetland is only accessible through sea transport. It's one of Papua New Guinea's neglected villages, which hasn't received much assistance from the national and provincial governments. In May this year, EMTV visited Mabudawan with a special parliamentary committee on public sector reform and service delivery on a fact-finding mission. Health service is relatively poor. Every day is a struggle with lack of funds for health patrols, medical equipment like labor beds, a rundown building, no vaccinations, electricity and water supply.
Country that used to help us, it's Australia. We just moved them across to Saibai and they help us because they know our situation. They are willing to help us.
Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
You're with National EMTV News. We'll go for a short break now, and when we come back, news from PNG's presence at APEC in the Philippines. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has told the APEC CEO Summit in the Philippines that Papua New Guinea aims to maintain its progressive economic growth levels of the past 14 years. He said the slowdown in the global economy has also affected PNG because of the country's dependence on major buyers of its mineral and petroleum exports. Mr. O'Neill said PNG has now realigned its focus to growing other sectors of the economy, such as agriculture and tourism.
One of the sessions during the APEC Leaders Week focused on the Asia-Pacific growth. Prime Minister O'Neill was part of an open forum discussion on the future of Asia-Pacific growth. He talked about the different opportunities of development in the PNG economy.
With the global commodity prices coming down, it has greatly affected the way we do business. As a result, we had to take some drastic decisions that we need to realign our economy, trying to grow other sectors of the economy like agriculture and tourism.
Philippines President Benigno Aquino shared the growth story of the Philippines and how it can be applied to regional growth.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is the most critical element of sustainable growth, inclusivity. If we can include our people in public life, in determining the path to our future and in building our economy, it redounds to a more stable environment and to greater economic prosperity.
He described how the Philippines' growth strategy hinges on empowerment for people to participate in the growing economy.
I share our story with you today because I believe we can do this on a regional scale. I believe if we work with each other's economies and if we harness the strengths of all our peoples, we can give rise not only to inclusive national economies, but to an Asia-Pacific where our citizens truly know what we talk about when we say growth.
According to the APEC Policy Support Unit, Asia-Pacific economies continue to grow, but at a moderate pace. This is now prompting next-generation trade and growth-boosting measures that target the region's emerging middle-class consumers. In the joint ministerial statement, the the APEC leaders are committed to support the regional economic integration agenda, foster micro, small and medium enterprises' participation in regional and global markets, and invest in human capital development. Deli Waigeno, National, MTV News.
Papua New Guinea and Vietnam have signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen the bonds between both countries. Minister for Foreign Affairs and Immigration Rimbik Pato signed the MOU with the Vietnamese Deputy Prime Minister Pham Binh Minh in Manila on the sidelines of the APEC meeting. The MOU on APEC cooperation between Papua New Guinea and Vietnam marks a historic occasion as both economies come together for the first time within their APEC membership. Mr. Pato said the signing signifies desires to enhance mutual cooperation and contribute to promoting APEC's role in the region. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill met with Philippines President Benigno Aquino in Manila at the sidelines of the APEC Economic Leaders meeting. The bilateral meeting took place on Tuesday at the Presidential Palace.
Prime Minister O'Neill was welcomed by the Philippines President Benigno Aquino III upon his arrival at the reception hall of the Malacanan Palace, the President's official residence. Mr. O'Neill was invited to sign the Palace guest book at the reception hall, where President Aquino personally witnessed the signing. A quick pose for the media before the pair was off to the Aguinaldo State Dining Room for the bilateral meeting. Mr. O'Neill was accompanied by PNG officials and members of Parliament, including Foreign Minister Rimbik Pato and Minister for State Enterprises Ben Micah. International media reports said Mr. O'Neill thanked Philippines for its rice exports and the contributions of Filipino teachers. It was reported that climate change was also discussed. The bilateral meeting was held at the sidelines of the APEC Economic Leaders meeting. Deli Waigeno, National, MTV News.
Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC countries, are committed to counter-terrorism measures within the region. As highlighted in the 2015 APEC Ministerial Meeting Joint Statement, APEC countries are encouraged to continue to take collective and individual actions to safeguard the region from terrorism and other illicit activities.
Counter-terrorism measures are being beefed up the world over following the latest terror attacks in Paris. APEC countries, as part of the global community, have also reaffirmed their stand against terrorism. The 2015 APEC Ministerial Joint Statement calls for economies to continue taking collective and individual actions to safeguard the region's infrastructure, travel, supply chains and financial systems from terrorism. Also, officials are to continue updating their counter-terrorism action plans regularly. The Philippines has assembled more than 30,000 military, police and civilian personnel in its largest security operations in years for the meeting in its capital, Manila, to counter security threats. Papua New Guinea has also devised a counter-terrorism action plan for the 2018 APEC Leaders Summit. The plan was last updated in 2014. Key agencies responsible for security are all been included in the counter-terrorism plan. While PNG will receive support from APEC countries to implement its counter-terrorism plan, there are calls from within PNG for the government to adequately fund these national agencies to implement future counter-terrorism plans. Mickey Cavera, National, MTV News.
In other APEC news, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill and Philippine President Benigno Aquino see no reason why their countries shouldn't be included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. O'Neill told Russian media outlet Sputnik that other APEC member countries may possibly be invited to join the 12-nation trade agreement, a topic high on APEC's agenda. The agreement involves other Pacific Rim countries as well as major players like Singapore and the US, but excludes China. It, however, has been criticized for its secrecy, but experts have warned of its potential to lower product standards and access to generic drugs in developing countries. President Aquino said the TPP's inclusivity defies the purpose of trade agreements.
Our theme is inclusivity. Every country would want to be part of all of these agreements. We were not invited to TPP to begin with, but we're expecting to be invited when they do open up membership. If the whole idea is to broaden trade, making it exclusive actually defeats the whole purpose of why you enter into all of these agreements.
And now looking at our finance news. The kina closed unchanged at $0.3395 US in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your kina was buying $0.3320 US, $0.4637 Australian dollars, $0.3084 euro, and 40.64 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, coffee, cocoa, and copra closed higher, while gold closed the day lower. Palm oil and copper closed lower, while crude oil closed the day higher. And on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 6 points higher, the ASX closed at 53 points lower, the All Ordinaries closed at 56 points higher. You're watching National EMTV News. Outspoken Northern Governor Gary Juffa calls on PNG and the Pacific not to forget West Papua. That and news making headlines overseas when we come back. Opposition leader Don Pollier has lashed out at moves by the national government to phase out grades 8 and 10 exams next year. He said in the wake of limited spaces in tertiary institutions, upper secondary schools will not be able to absorb the increase in enrolment of grade 12 students in 2017. He said the government must be responsible in planning for a more effective implementation of this move. Pollier said the opposition believes in a policy of skill industry growth where sustainable employment is a way forward in improving education standards. He said the government must build more tertiary institutions if they want more students to further their education. Northern Governor Gary Juffa has been critical of the extreme media attention the Paris attacks are receiving compared to the support for the plight of West Papua. Gary Juffa called on Papua New Guineans and Pacific Islanders to be more vigilant of similar issues in our region, especially West Papua. He says there needs to be equal support in our region as we remember the victims of the Paris attacks.
Governor Juffa, in his comparison of the limelight over current issues today, said that the Paris attack alone received 5,000 likes and 8,000 shares over only an hour after the news of the attacks broke online. He says this rarely happens when comparable violence takes place in West Papua. The vocal governor also expressed the importance of equality of human life, where he observed the profound silence of West Papuan support compared to the uproar for Paris.
Across the 760-kilometer border, a whole host of terrible activities are being carried out, oppressive activities. People are being brutalized, being oppressed, being killed. Melanesians, Pacific Islanders. We can't just imagine that these things are not happening.
He added that in such a case as the Paris attacks, we may be reminded that the trend of racism is still very active in the world, even today. In the Paris attacks, we see actual terrorists, racism, double standards, as well as dualism. Governor Juffa encouraged Papua New Guineans and other Pacific Island nations to be more vigilant of the issues currently affecting our region. Lorraine Gabina, National EMTV News.
Russia has spoken out on the demise of Russian Metrojet Flight 9268, which crashed into the Sinai Desert last month on its way out of Egypt's resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh. The head of Russia's Federal Security Service, Alexander Bortnikov, confirmed the findings in a late-night meeting on Monday.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, we've studied personal belongings, luggage and parts of the plane which crashed over Egypt on October 31. According to the results of carried out tests on those items, I've mentioned traces of an explosive of foreign origin have been found. According to an analysis by our specialists, a homemade bomb containing up to 1 kilogram of TNT detonated during the flight, causing the plane to break up in mid-air, which explains why parts of the fuselage were spread over such a large area. We can unequivocally say it was a terrorist act.
The murder of our people in Sinai is one of the bloodiest by the number of victims of such crimes. We won't wipe off tears over our hearts and souls. It will stay with us forever. But that will not prevent us from finding and punishing the perpetrators. We should not apply any time limits. We should know them all by name. We will search for them everywhere, wherever they are hiding. We will find them in any spot on the planet and punish them.
You're with Wednesday's news. I'll have all the latest sporting news in Trukai Sports. Don't go away.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports and to Rugby League first. The Southern region will play host to several Nines tournaments in the coming weeks. The first will kick off this weekend with the Tubusera Lakwaharu Nines. It's a lucrative offer with attractive cash prizes to be awarded.
If recent tournaments are anything to go by, there has been a definite surge of interest in the shorter format of rugby league here in Papua New Guinea. The recent Fairfax Gaire Nines and the gold medal performance of the national Nines team in this year's Pacific Games have not only lifted the profile of the Nines format, but also the SP Hunters support, not only for the code's development, but the game in general.
The game is still developed at a grassroots level, and we put a lot of development back through with the people we have on the ground here.
Rugby league fans, you are in for a treat. Starting this weekend with the Lakwaharu Nines tournament already attracting more than 40 teams, the annual Keleone Nines Pukatemu Cup, and with 30 teams confirmed so far, the Kilahauda Southern Nines tournament to be staged here in Port Moresby. The organizing of such events not only attracts the interest of the general public, but also creates a competitive environment for the code to be promoted. Jurume Mafu, National EMTV Sports.
Ricky Herbert, former head coach of the PNG senior men's soccer team, has been replaced by Fleming Sertzlev. Fleming from Denmark has coached Armenia, Iran and Nigerian youth teams and has been on the job for over 40 years. He was with the Port Moresby-based senior men's train-on squad this morning at Bissini.
With little knowledge on the team and reading online about PNG men's soccer, Sertzlev was in Leh last weekend with the Leh-based train-on squad. This week he is in Port Moresby running training sessions at the Bissini complex. They have been training for 3 mornings with a lot of skill being discovered, mainly in the midfield and attacking positions. Sertzlev said Papua New Guinea is weak in defense and it's something he will be working on with the team.
You are a very good attacking team, and it seems to me, I don't know if it's correct because I've been here so shortly, but it seems to me that you are educating a lot of midfielders and attackers, and they are actually really good, but you don't develop so many defenders as far as I see it. So it's the point where I have to work a lot.
With the National Soccer League set to kick off this weekend, Sertzlev said he will be able to watch a few matches with the possibility of getting to know some of the players.
Actually, I think it has been possible very fast to have a good knowledge of the players here.
We are also at the eve of the Oceania Nations Cup and the World Cup qualifiers. Preparations leading up to these tournaments were in doubt, but Sertzlev has confirmed that there is enough time.
Yeah, I hope so, especially if we can have this arrangement that we, for example, 3 mornings every week can have the national team players collected. then it'll build. It's the best possibility to build a strong team to the Nations Cup and the World Cup qualifiers.
Setslev wants more training sessions held next week with the hope of more team-related exercises to be done. Elijah Lavette, National EMTV Sports.
Vice President of the PNG Volleyball Federation, Killer Dick, has broken his silence over the national men's performance at the 2015 Pacific Games earlier this year. He said following their outstanding performance at the Mini Pacific Games last year, the team did not perform to expectation.
The previous Pacific Games in 2011 saw the team win bronze and also take out gold at the Mini Pacific Games last year. But questions have been raised regarding the team's performance at the recent Pacific Games earlier this year after the team finished fourth.
And firstly, I want to express my disappointment for the poor performance of our men's volleyball team. A lot of money was invested in the preparations of the team. By and large, we were not given that leverage to, work with the team because, so-called expatriates came over from Australia to train our players, and they came with new ideas and new, interventions. And
despite the results for the men's national volleyball team, Killer Dick believes the team has the potential to be more competitive in coming international tournaments.
We want to uplift our team again and make sure that we prepare well for the Oceania Games and even if the Mini Pacific Games comes our way.
Mr. Dick praised the efforts of the beach volleyball men who created history by winning the first ever gold medal at the Pacific Games.
Beach volleyball did very well, so we want to ride on their success in the mini games next year. Beach volleyball will be one of the sports, so we are looking forward to that.
The team will now prepare to come back stronger to uplift volleyball PNG in the region. Dion Kombang, National EMTV Sports.
Your Trukai Sports will have football and rugby union when we come back.
Trukai Sports.
Australian and Socceroos pioneer footballer expert Tim Cahill scored a hat-trick against Bangladesh in the World Cup qualifier in Dhaka. The win will now see Australia on top of their qualifying group ahead of main rivals Jordan, who are 2 points behind. Shane Soroya reports.
Cahill scored 3 goals just within 37 minutes, while skipper Miles Jordinak also struck the final goal of the night to send Australia to the top of their qualifying group ahead of main rivals Jordan, who are 2 points behind and play Kyrgyzstan in Bishkek. The match was described as one-way traffic in favor of the Australians, who controlled possessions despite struggling to move the ball around freely on the long-grassed surface. At times, the Socceroos were sloppy against their lower-ranked opponents and off-touch here and there with scruffy ball plays. But Aaron Moy shone bright as usual, with a hand in every goal and whenever he found space, with ever-looming aerial threat of Cahill just waiting to strike. There was not a Bangladeshi defender in sight for the former Everton man's first, when he nodded in a deep free kick from Mui on the 6th minute. It was nearly half an hour later before the Melbourne City star set up the second with through ball to debutant Josh Risden, with perfectly weighted cross to Cahill to score. With 5 minutes later, Australia's all-time leading goal scorer added another to his total by adding the finishing touch to a cross from Mui. Crystal Palace midfielder Jordinak got in the action just before the interval with a smooth header from close range after Bailey Wright headed across the box. The crowd were on their feet briefly as the home side made a couple of offensive plunges forward. However, Tim Cahill's goal-scoring record will go down in the history books as one of the Socceroos' greatest goal scorers of all time. Shane Soroya, National EMTV Sports.
The world of rugby is in deep mourning after the unfortunate passing of rugby legend Jonah Lomu at the age of 40. Lomu was recently inducted into the New Zealand Sports Hall and World Rugby Hall of Fame for his contribution to the code on and off the field. He was and still is considered the greatest winger in the country's rugby history. Jonah legend Lomu was diagnosed with kidney failure following his rugby career in 1995 and has been facing serious health issues until his passing. Lomu's career began in 1994 after debuting for the New Zealand All Blacks. Since then, he has recorded 63 caps for the world's best side and has been labelled as the best winger in the history of world rugby. He was acknowledged as a top player of the 1995 World Cup in South Africa and was considered as rugby union's biggest draw card.
Kilograms, 6'5".
Following his success in the 95 Rugby World Cup, Lomu had been faced with kidney disorders and was diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome. His first kidney transplant was in 2004. It had been a long road to recovery for the legendary world rugby icon. His most recent public appearance was in the 2015 Rugby World Cup as part of a campaign to promote the game. While positive developments had been evident in the 40-year-old since his first transplant, All Blacks team doctor told New Zealand television station 3 News earlier today it was an unexpected death as he had been in good shape in the last few months. His passing comes as a huge shock to the entire international rugby fraternity. A husband, a father and a hero to many around the world, Lomu's legacy as a world rugby great will forever remain in the hearts of millions. All Blacks captain Richie McCaw is expected to announce his retirement at a press conference in Wellington, New Zealand tomorrow. The 35-year-old will officially announce that he will hang up his playing boots after leading New Zealand to their second straight Rugby World Cup title in England earlier this month.
Only a few short weeks after beating the Wallabies in the London final of the 2015 Rugby World Cup, New Zealand Rugby has announced to have a press conference with All Blacks captain Richie McCaw at their headquarters tomorrow. There is media speculation that the champion All Black might use the press conference to announce his retirement from rugby. Although McCaw has refused to comment on the issue, preferring the country celebrate their cup title, it would be a surprise if the 35-year-old continued to play after achieving everything in the sport. The flanker will end his 15-year international career with a world record 148 tests in which he won 131. He captained the All Blacks 111 times and led 98 of those games to victory. McCaw created history by becoming the first ever captain to win a World Cup back-to-back and is arguably the most decorated rugby player the world has seen. Jaylee Sapies, National MTV Sports.
That story wraps up Trukai Sports for tonight. Up next, your weather details. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
And a look at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in the southern region. Port Moresby, fine and dry. And in the Momase region, Madang, expecting a chance of patchy rain and showers. And in the New Guinea Islands, Lorengau, chance of patchy rain and showers. And in the Highlands region, Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg, low clouds. Before we go, recapping our main headlines again. Pomio MP wants tougher laws on sexual offences. Morobe Governor assures Lae City Street vendors ban will remain. And Prime Minister Peter O'Neill tells APEC Papua New Guinea will maintain growth. That ends the bulletin for tonight. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Lorraine Genya. Pleasant evening. Good night.